We want to have one central source of approval, and we have, I think, great Republican support. I think we probably have Democrat support.
There's a way to work together to get a federal solution here, and he should work with Congress, not threaten states, and this is what they did yesterday.
If you look at even at the executive order that the president just released on AI, it looks like it was written by Silicon Valley. And if the president wanted to work together, I think there's a better way to make sure that the American people could actually be protected in this moment.
Well, the president has everybody talking again tonight. Let's bring in our panel. Fox News contributor Hugh Hewitt, Real Clear Politics White House correspondent Philip Wegman, and Yemisi Egbewale, former chief of staff and advisor to the Biden White House press office. This executive order, Hugh, is a big deal. It's a big sign to not just the AI companies, but to China. But there are going to be critics, and there are many, and not just Democratic governors. I think of somebody like Bill Lee down in Tennessee. I don't know what he thinks about this yet, but he's trying really hard to protect those artists down in Nashville.
Well, I love all of my Republican governors, and they're wrong. There is no silver medal in AI. There's only a gold medal, and the United States has to win it, or China will win it. And you can't, with no second and third place, only a winner. What the president did was to say, in a very direct fashion to the states, get out of the way. This is a federal issue. And by the way, Congress can add.
Well, he just circumvented them.
Yeah, they can come back in with a law if they want to. It's just saying to the states, stay away, and I'm glad he did because there is no second place.
Phil, he's been leaning in a lot into this AI world. He's been getting a lot of advice from the biggest experts on it, and he's fully into this.
He really is. I was going to ask ChatGPT to help me untangle the situation, but instead I did the old-fashioned thing and got on the phone. But it is puzzling because the impetus for this executive order was that the White House and these tech companies didn't want to have to deal with a patchwork of 50 different state regulations. They said that that would hamper their ability to have AI dominance in the United States. The problem is that there's no national standard just yet. And this is the same administration, by the way, that this week greenlit the sale of advanced NVIDIA chips to China. Now, the White House, they told me that there are security protocols in place to ensure that the Chinese communists don't reverse engineer those. But even if that's the case, it seems like this is a sop to big tech and not a play for AI dominance. Because if it was, keep the chips and then get rid of the regulations.
Yemisi, Democrats, of course, are in the choir of complaints, but it's hard to listen to those complaints when Chuck Schumer, I remember this, being on the Hill, said we're gonna get together and put together regulations for AI. That was months ago. That never happened. They brought in all those executives and CEOs, those big tech CEOs, and nothing ever happened.
Look, I think the president actually has the right instinct here. You cannot build the future of AI in America with 50 different rule books. If I'm a startup, I can't comply with New York's laws, California's laws. In that case, I would stand down or I would move overseas. This is actually going to help retain American innovation and entrepreneurship. And I think the president is making the right move.
Okay, we'll move on to Venezuela now, which is what Hugh really wants to talk about. This is the president in the Oval Office on possible land strikes happening in Venezuela and when that could happen.
You've talked about land strikes happening soon. Is there anything at this point that can prevent that? And is the objective, if you make that decision?
Well, I don't want to say that, but it's not only land strikes on Venezuela. It's land strikes on horrible people that are bringing in drugs and killing our people.
Hugh, how fast are we getting to this?
Not fast enough. Every day delays is another day that more drugs come in the United States, more people are being terrorized, including the Cardinal Catholic Church down there. I just wanted to remind the Democrats who are going to be upset. 1989, George H.W. Bush sends 27,000 troops to Panama in Operation Just Cause. 23 Americans are killed in action, hundreds are wounded. Panamanians die. We were there for a couple of months, and we got rid of Noriega. This is a replay. They don't need any congressional authorization if the president wants to move in. The sooner the better, because they are killing Americans every day.
Well, the criticism really is about a regime change. The administration doesn't seem to directly want that to happen, but they are hoping Maduro just does it.
Yeah, talk is cheap unless you have a U.S. strike carrier group in the region. And what we've seen from Donald Trump is that he said on the campaign trail that he was going to use the military against these cartels. Now that he's in the White House, he's not only sent 22 of these alleged drug boats to the bottom of the ocean, but he's also seizing oil tankers. When he talks about land strikes, it's unclear what exactly that means, and it's unclear what the war initiative is. Is this a war against drugs or a regime change war? I think that the strategic ambiguity right now now, when we don't know whether it would be airstrikes or special forces or even some sort of invasion, I mean, that's enough to warm the heart of warhawks anywhere.
Democrats certainly want to make this an issue.
I mean, yeah, moving to land is definitely a cause for some kind of alarm. But I think Democrats are also looking at the American people who have a little bit of foreign policy fatigue. And I think Americans are a little bit wary about entering into another open-ended conflict at a time when we're really focused on our domestic economy.
Affordability. That's where that
Affordability.
comes in. Okay, we'll move to winners and losers. Hugh?
My winner is Senator Dan Sullivan, Alaska. He walked out of the Oval yesterday after President Trump signed two regulatory repeals of Biden-era initiatives that had locked up a lot of Alaska initiatives. He's up for re-election. Good for Dan Sullivan. The loser, look, I love the 1973 Mets. That was the people that don't never give up, but the Mets got hosed by, you gotta
Mets,
bereaved by the New
man.
York Post. That's the hardest hitting cover this week. So the losers are the Mets.
How is anyone still a Mets fan?
I don't know.
I'm going to get so many hate tweets
Oh, you
on
are.
X now. Yemisi.
Look, my loser is Michigan's head football coach, and not just because I believe in the SEC, okay? I think that what happened there is disappointing for the university, but also for the students, and it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. And my winner, to pivot, is Nicki Minaj. Y'all, if you're not following her on Twitter right now, she is something else. She's jumped into the political game, and she's so interesting.
Amazing. Phil?
My loser is the White House. They brought to bear their political machine in the Midwest, and it came to a grinding halt. President Trump tried to twist arms of Indiana state legislators there to go along with a redistricting play. J.D. Vance actually flew in, but in the end, Indiana said no. My winner, if he stays alive through Sunday, is old man Philip Rivers, the 44-year-old quarterback who unretired. He's going to be under center for the Indianapolis Colts. He has 10 children, 1 grandchild, and very soon he is going to have a Super Bowl ring because we are going to the championship and we're going to win.
My producer goes, 10? Yes. and good for him. Good for him. Hugh, I will follow up on healthcare really quickly before we go. Just looking ahead to next week, Speaker Johnson just dropped this new healthcare bill. We know President Trump wants to get something done. If they don't get something done before these expire, these subsidies, is there some political fallout for Republicans ahead?
There will be some short-term pain because the Obamacare catastrophe is so systemic. All of healthcare was ruined by Obamacare. The real cost has to be seen before it can be fixed. So I don't think they want to rush in where fools do not want to go. They got to sit back and wait and see how bad the damage is, and then they can begin to fix it. But Obamacare, catastrophic failure.
Yemisi?
Well, Obamacare needs some revisions, but of course, here we are at the end of the year when Congress said that they would figure something out before 2026, and I
Well,
think it's very
now is the
unlikely
time they get
that they will
serious,
figure
right?
something out.
Now that they have a deadline, that's when they get serious.
Well, they can do reconciliation next year, and they can actually get some ideas. But until you know the actual cost of the people who are actually hurt, I think it is premature to go back in and try and do anything.
Phil, what does the White House want?
I asked Vice President J.D. Vance at the beginning of the shutdown if they were going to negotiate over Obamacare. He said that they were willing to. This week, we saw just how far they were willing to take that. The immediate question, as you pointed out, is who gets the blame? In this case, I think the answer is right there in the name. It is Obamacare. Democrats staked their reputation on this in 2010. They passed it with a party line vote. And thus far, there's been nothing but frustration with the result. The original GOP sin, though, something that Speaker Mike Johnson said was a failure of Republicans during Trump's first term, was to not get on board with repeal and replace. And I'm not holding my breath, hoping that they can come up with a solution in the 11th hour.
We're not going to see a shutdown again, right?
No.
You don't think the Dems will try that
Not
again?
going into 2026 midterms.
Okay. Thank you, panel, for coming in on your Friday. Good to see you in person.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.